So for our third and final video on Descartes' first meditation, we will be talking about his flawed creator scenario and the conclusion of the first meditation. So let's remember, here's what looks like the argument of the first meditation. The conclusion is I should hold back from all my opinions, and the premises are, whatever I have up till now accepted as most true, I have acquired either from or through the senses. First premise, all my knowledge comes from the senses. Second premise, nothing from the senses is completely certain and indubitable. That is, everything from the senses is at least somewhat uncertain and doubtable. Third premise, I should hold back my assent from opinions which are not completely certain and indubitable. If all of those are true, then I should hold back from all of my opinions. Well, we're looking at the defense of the third premise, and we saw that Descartes tries to presents three scenarios to give us reason to believe that everything from the senses is at least somewhat uncertain. And we saw that the first two scenarios, everyday perceptual mistakes and dreaming, give us, Descartes thinks that they show that, in the dreaming scenario in particular, lots of what we get from the senses is at least somewhat uncertain, because on the one hand, the senses alone do not allow us to tell whether or not we're dreaming, and on the other hand, if we are dreaming, a huge amount of what we believe would be false. So the senses alone can't tell us either we're dreaming and much of what we believe based on sensory information is false, or we're really perceiving and much of what we believe based on sensory perception is true. The senses can't distinguish between those two scenarios, and so most of our sensory beliefs are at least uncertain. But Descartes wants to undermine all of our sensory beliefs by showing that they're at least somewhat uncertain. And for that reason, he introduces his third scenario, the flawed creator, because the dreaming scenario doesn't give us reason to doubt beliefs like there are bodies, there is space, bodies move around in space, and such very general beliefs like that. They only give us, yeah. So let's look at the flawed creator scenario. So what might Descartes' creator and our creator be? Well, it might be a perfect infinite being, like we discussed at the beginning of the course, this perfect God. But Hume suggested some other possibilities. It might be a flawed, limited being, or it may even just be random processes. And Descartes adds these, and Descartes considers both of these possibilities. It might even be an evil genius being an infinitely powerful being who is out to, in some way or other, not treat us well, who is out to deceive us, in fact. So if we were created by a perfect infinite being, that perfect infinite being presumably would provide us with sensory organs that at least fairly reliably, if not perfectly, produce accurate sensory experiences. And so if that were the case, we would have good reason to trust our sensory perception. But if we were created by a flawed limited being or random processes, then it would be very surprising if our sensory perception were perfect, and it might be much less accurate than perfect. And if we were created by an evil genius, out to deceive us, then actually all of our sensory experiences would be inaccurate. That's the goal of the evil genius, right? It's giving us sensory experiences that are misleading. That's what it does. That's one of the things it tries to do. And there's some science fiction that people sometimes talk about in this context. So there's The Matrix, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with The Matrix, but the plot of The Matrix, at least at the beginning, is that there are these aliens, right, that have put all of humanity in these little cocoon things and have created a simulated computer program reality that people sort of live out their experiences in and think is real, but actually they're being used as batteries. And sometimes people talk about this as like the evil genius. Actually, that's not quite the evil genius. That's more the evil dream scenario. The Matrix is actually more like the dream scenario, because in that situation you actually have a body and you're permanently in the dream and you don't know about the actual physical reality, but it is a dream scenario because in fact, you do have a body, among other things, and your perceptions of how space works are right. You're just misperceiving it all because your brain's being manipulated by the aliens. So the evil genius scenario is actually quite radical, because in that scenario we're imagining, you actually don't have, like, the things that you imagine out there in the world around you, like me and the computer screen in front of you and your phone and your parents and your, whatever, don't exist. But also, actually, your body doesn't exist. Your body is just is some sort of bizarre hallucination. You're having, all the experiences of what it's like to have a body. There's the whatever. If you pay attention to your feet, you'll notice there's some sensations in your feet right now, and maybe there's some sensations in your stomach, and so on. And just the experience you have of, how your body's arranged in space, all of that is an illusion on this evil genius view. So the evil genius is a quite radical deceiver, right? It makes all of our sensory experiences inaccurate. It systematically goes about creating inaccurate sensory experiences, every single one of them. So, like, I feel like I have a hand right now. I don't. The sensation of having a hand is being produced by the evil genius. So, and not just a hand, but a forearm and an arm and a shoulder and this hand and that hand and that hand and the head, everything. I don't have it in the evil genius scenario. So if there were an evil genius, all of our sensory perceptions would be inaccurate, and Descartes thinks that sensory perception can't tell whether or not that's the case, right? Can you, by sort of sensory inspection, determine whether or not there's an evil genius? Well, no. The point is that the evil genius always produces false experiences, and you can't control them. The evil genius is controlling them, and so you're never going to get a sensory experience that would allow you to say, oh, well, there is an evil genius, or, oh, there's not an evil genius, or so Descartes thinks. And so this flawed creator evil genius scenario, this is the killer scenario that Descartes is looking for. In this scenario, our peripheral beliefs are false, the beliefs based on hazy perceptual experience. Our central beliefs, like I have a body, or that's a fire, or in physics and astronomy, those are all false. But even the beliefs that there are bodies, and my beliefs say about geometry, Descartes thinks in all of those scenarios, all of those beliefs that are supported by perceptual evidence, those are all false. The evil genius makes our perception makes it so that all of our sensory experiences are false, and so all of our beliefs based on our sensory experiences are false, and so all of our beliefs, if all of our beliefs come from sensory experience, are all false. And we cannot rule out, at least by looking at our senses alone, that we're in such a scenario. Our senses alone cannot determine, are we being deceived by an evil genius, or are we actually in the world as it seems to be, as perception tells us it is. So let's be clear about what Descartes hasn't argued for. Does Descartes believe there's an evil genius? No, he hasn't argued that. At the end of Meditation 1, he says he's going to pretend that there's an evil genius. Why is he going to pretend that there's an evil genius? Well, because he says his habit of belief, his habit of trusting his beliefs, his sensory beliefs about the physical world, are extremely deep, which they are. Try believing you don't have a body. If you pull that off for very long, people are going to think there's something that you've lost contact with reality, and it's extremely hard to do, right? So Descartes thinks, look, I need to actually sort of play tricks on myself to get myself to stop believing some of these things, and so I'm going to pretend that there's an evil genius. So he doesn't think there actually is an evil genius. He also actually doesn't say we cannot tell, full stop. So what has Descartes claimed about the senses and the evil geniuses? He said we can't use our senses to tell whether or not we're being deceived by an evil genius. The senses alone cannot tell either sensory experiences are accurate or they're produced by an evil deceiver. The senses can't tell. That's what he says. And that's actually all he's claiming. He doesn't make any stronger claims that there is an evil genius, or even he doesn't even say we can't tell, that there's no way to tell. He says our senses can't tell us. So that's what Descartes has to say about the third scenario, the evil genius or false or flawed creator scenario. So we're now in a position to look back at Descartes' overall argument. It says, whatever I have up till now accepted as most true, I have acquired either from the senses or through the senses. That seems fairly plausible, if you might think, and it's certainly what Descartes' contemporaries, the people around him, and the philosophers and so on believed. Knowledge is completely certain and indubitable. that's the way Descartes is going to... We don't always think about knowledge that way, but that's the way Descartes is asking us to think about knowledge in the context of a foundation for new science and sort of doing this retreat from the world and trying to find secure foundations. Nothing from the senses is completely certain and indubitable. Well, there's this evil genius scenario. If we're in the evil genius scenario, all of our sensory experiences are false, and using the senses alone, we can't tell whether or not we're in the evil genius scenario. So Descartes actually hasn't established the third, or the second, the middle premise. And he doesn't think that he has, and he doesn't say that he has, although he's not entirely clear about this. The situation we're in at the end of the first meditation is, if all we have are the senses, at least this is how Descartes is thinking of it, if all we have are the senses, then we should believe the premises, and so we should believe the conclusion. If we have more than the senses, who knows about whether or not we should believe the premises, and in particular, whether or not we should believe the middle premise. Nothing from the senses is completely certain and indubitable. What Descartes thinks he's shown is, if all we have are the senses, in terms of that's the only source of our knowledge, then we should believe all three of the premises, and so we should believe the conclusion. And so the situation we're in, then, is Descartes has sort of given us an argument for skepticism. We're remembering where one view is there's a physical world and we know lots about it. A second view is there's no physical world and the appearance that there is an illusion. That's what, if the evil genius scenario were true, is one way that can be true. And then a third alternative is skepticism. We don't know whether or not there's a physical world. And at the end of meditation 1, the situation as Descartes has it is, we should be skeptics about the physical world if all of our opinions come from the senses. Because if all of our opinions come from the senses, then we can't tell whether or not we're in the evil genius scenario or things are as we perceive them to be. Maybe there's some other way we could do it, but if all of our opinions come from the senses, then indeed we ought to be skeptics about the physical world. So in the next module, we're going to see that this is not where Descartes wants us to end up. Descartes, in fact, is not a skeptic. But we might, and we'll see why he's not a skeptic in the next module, what it is in the later meditations, how he thinks we do have knowledge. But for now, at the end of the meditation 1, this is the situation we're in. Descartes thinks he's got us to. If all of our opinions come from the senses, then we don't have any knowledge, certainly of the physical world, or indeed, perhaps, of anything else. And so for your homework for this module, I'd like you to think about whether or not you agree with this conclusion. Not we should be skeptics about the physical world, but rather, if all of our opinions come from the senses, then we should be skeptics about the physical world. Do you think that Descartes has really gotten to where he thinks he's gotten at the end of the first meditation?